Okay. So you know how when you're at AWP and you go to an offsite reading and it's kind of a cool place, but it's also just a bar restaurant. And some people are just trying to get drunk or have dinner, and some people are there for the reading, and the mic sort of works, but only if you're really close to the stage, which isn't really a stage, but the people trying to have dinner are actually closer to the stage than the people who are trying to hear the reader. And you're on your third margarita and your dad is texting you because he wants you to come hang out because you're never in Texas. And you're like, this is my job. I am at work, which is kind of true. But is it really work if you're that drunk? And anyway, who's reading? What press is up? Am I on soon? Okay, so if you are familiar with this scene, you know that for the person at the mic to break through all that noise and actually transfix you has to be a pretty amazing poet. And that is what Sarah Kain Gutowski did. Hearing her read immediately made me want to bring her to KGB. And so from that very last vestige of the before times, which was AWP San Antonio, Sarah and I forged an unbreakable bond over Google Docs, some form of alcohol, and a very confusingly themed bar. Right? In Gutowski's work, the animal exists side by side and inside of the human, a kind of personification joined with a beastliness that makes the animal both symbol and object, ineluctably real but transcendently meaningful. In her work, there is an acknowledgement of the monstrous viscera of being alive, alongside the tender loves that make us care for our own bodies and each other's. Sarah Kain Gutowski is the author of Fabulous Beast, runner-up for the 2018 XJ Kennedy Prize, winner of the 14th Annual National Indie Excellence Award for Poetry, and a 2019 Forward Indies finalist. She is the author of the chapbook Fabulous Beast, The Sow, published by Hyacinth Girl Press. She holds an MFA in poetry from NYU University, represent, and a BA from James Madison University. Her poems have appeared in many journals. She is a professor of English at Suffolk County Community College, and she has co-chaired the annual SCCC Creative Writing Festival for over a decade. Please give a warm KGB welcome to Sarah Kain Gutowski.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction, Jason. I don't know if I deserve that, but I really appreciate it. And I'm going to share it. So I thought, if you don't mind, I'm going to read some new work I did. These are poems that I read. Some of them I read at AWP in that bar you mentioned. It's part of a manuscript I'm polishing up and getting ready to submit. It's called The Familiar, and it's a sequence of fabulous poems. They create a kind of, I mean, by now I think it's a novella about female midlife. You know, that magical moment when you realize that you've kind of like peaked, that all possibility and like it's just narrowing, if not fading. It's a comedy. It's not really a comedy. It's like, you know, I'm trying to make it a little bit light, but it's kind of heavy sometimes. But two of these poems are going to be published in Painted Bride Quarterly, which I'm pretty happy about because it's an excellent mag. So this is A Great Damage. She wakes but can't remember falling asleep in this room. The sheets, slick with damp, feel unfamiliar. Grit rims her eyelids. The bed feels foreign, loaned from memory's recesses. We haven't seen her for years. She hasn't been allowed to visit. Now she's welcomed, cajoled and coaxed, flattered by our pleas. Desperation's humidity skirts the bed. Daylight, dishwashers, doctor's offices. My ordinary self must become reacquainted with ordinary living. She rises, wanders the rooms. Her feet sink, make light depressions in the carpet and brief, dark splotches on the hardwood. She thinks about cleaning filters and air conditioning units, making an appointment for an oil change, reserving a room for next week's meeting. She consults the calendar, but its coded pen and crossouts refuse to clarify. There's too much to undo here, she thinks. A great damage has been done. Panic beads her skin. From our bedroom's shadows, the clock shrieks an alarm. A little push. My extraordinary self turned out to be less extraordinary than we'd anticipated. She wasn't even good at packing up her things. She kept removing, then replacing her tap shoes and favorite sequined gowns, glitter escaping cellophane and coating her fingers, the bedspread, all surfaces inside and beyond her suitcase. Now we find reminders of her everywhere. My ordinary self lifts the shades in the morning and frowns. Sunlight refracts off tiny squares adhered to the nightstand, the hamper's wickered rings. This will take hours and days to remove. Her personal items sit tossed in a corner. What we found after she left: wads of foreign paper currency, a camera leaking acrid batteries, the loose ephemera of a brief photography career. She left not in a rush, but in a cloud of disarray and tears, the melodrama that marked her too overwrought for the stage. She didn't want to stay, but didn't want to go, didn't want to make the decision to separate. My ordinary self gave her a little push. Nothing too vicious, just pressure along the shoulders that said, "This is your direction." It was the tree leaves grinding like dark teeth that whispered, "It won't do any good to look back." So the book kind of sets up these, two protagonists and antagonists, the ordinary self and the extraordinary self. And then there's like me just kind of hanging out watching. They sing her praises. In something of a paradox, my ordinary self is rather extraordinary. My ordinary self has follow through. Not all of the natural world or the unnatural has this persistence, the dogged will to see a thing done to its damn end. That's why she's so good at laundry. She remembers how important it is to keep the clothes from pressing too far into one another, creating canyons of wrinkles. She avoids embarrassing piles of socks and thongs and linens from forming new terrain on the furniture. She hangs when delicates need drying, folds when the cycle is finished. She itemizes by type, material, color, and care. These days, no one ever goes without matching socks, unless by choice. My ordinary self is tireless, albeit weary, of fitted sheets and their stubborn, imperfect corners. In the basement laundry, crickets keep her company. They sing her praises in the dark, though no one listens. Backseat scores. It's not like we drew up charges and nailed them to the door. One morning, my ordinary self appeared, much older, of course, than we'd seen her last, yet still her essential ordinary self. So dependable, so not extraordinary. But the house couldn't hold us all. Not enough hot water, only so much space on the family couch. My extraordinary self took it badly, jumped fully clothed into denial. She made claims about promises, sacrifice, and betrayal. Quite frankly, it was embarrassing. My ordinary self moved around her in a tidy silence, sweeping the broken dishes off the floor. Then, my extraordinary self changed tactics. She took the children to a water park, a carnival, and the arcade. Next, she bought 2 sets of crotchless panties and took my husband on long, indulgent car rides. She cooked elaborate meals, and yet my dog liked my ordinary self more. She never forgot to feed him, and the children ran to her with their cuts and sores. Even my husband found he preferred my ordinary self's predictable morning sex to roadside backseat scores. My extraordinary self had to admit defeat. My ordinary self would stay, and she would leave. That last night, while the family watched the Avengers, she curled fetal on the carpet and wept noisily at our feet. Torn and useless. Some morning she rises and walks by the river, watching. The ducks and geese ignore each other. The mosquitoes rise in clouds above the humid bank and disperse with the breeze. The dragonflies hover and couple and drop in a green, erratic rhythm. She's had a difficult time knowing what she should do with her days, my extraordinary self, since she left our home. Other mornings, she sits on the steps of the library, tries to avoid staring at patients waiting for methadone. Instead, she watches the woman in her bedroom, slippers and crop top, shuffling away from the mall. A sour, pre-dawn, yeasty odor lingers around the bakery, and she considers eating. Usually, though, she forgoes the croissant or roll and walks to Main Street, watching traffic build to an angry knot. She feels the driver's tension, fill her own empty stomach, their need and anxiety writ in the script of their eyes. They squint against the sun's rising assault. She remembers waking each morning with a cramp, ambition inflaming her gut. Now she is calmly and strangely present, aware of everything she ignored before she moved out of our home. But she feels murky and static all the same. No less a zombie than the woman who drags her scuffs against the warming asphalt, who tries now to cross the teeming intersection in rush hour, that tracks on her arms the outline of a torn, useless map. And this is recurring catastrophes. My ordinary self is not great at networking. Her conversation is void of art and humor, not because she doesn't know what to say, but rather her dearth of interest. She won't return emails, schedule dinner dates, make phone calls, all gestures rather ordinary people make to stay connected and maintain relationships. My ordinary self runs a little warm when asked about her lack of friends. If I become distracted by other people and their other problems, she once said, how can I focus on ours? At this point in our life, she is correct. Fires keep erupting at home and spread to school, to work, on the flat, dry road, to the grocery. Everywhere, smoke and heat and the need to escape. My extraordinary self is never around for these recurring catastrophes, but my ordinary self and I can feel her like the tremor underfoot when a house folds its charred frame to the ground. Somewhere, she's smiling, her eyes hot and gray as ash. And then, if you don't mind, I am going to just change my background because the next three poems that I'm going to read, I haven't been a very active writer since the pandemic hit, but my very good friend and colleague, Meredith Starr, and I have been collaborating. And so she's a visual artist, and she's been making cyanotypes that have to do with the interior life that we've all been kind of stuck with. And she, so this piece that's behind me is one of them. It's beautiful blue, and it's called Haircuts in Quarantine. And so these poems are part of this project that we're hoping will be one day like an art exhibition or a book manuscript, or maybe both, or we're not quite sure where we're going with it exactly yet, but we're having fun responding to one another's work. So this is what comes next. We forget past lovers like we used to love dancing, our body taking and giving space, joy's inherent rhythm and song. These days, I forget how joy feels in the body, as I forget them, those men, like a dance step missed. The body moves and then stops, tries to remember what comes next. With dance and romance, it's best not to overthink. Maybe this is how I reclaim joy. But when the needle lifts from the record, or the cassette pops, or the track ends, and we're paused, hip cocked, arms lifted in praise, ankle turned to dig that knee deep to the beat. How can we not feel foolish or immense grief? How do you not mourn that loss, what you did once almost by instinct, when music, those men, called and your whole body sang back? Every second feels like theft. Rabbits have no use for barter or loan. They take nothing in excess except their heartbeats, fast and light as hummingbird wings. The rabbit's heart does not perch. It hovers inside its chest, each inhalation a rapid, minute clenching. The rabbit's heart does not speak either. It doesn't chirrup at the rising light or when its mother returns to the nest. For a few days, she's a thatch of heartbeats, a sky at dawn, and then she's a muscle memory, reflexive and beyond language. The rabbit has few words it needs anyway. Not words like regret, and not like laughter. Of what use is sadness or humor when every second feels like theft, and warmth means the early morning sun, but also a predator's breath before the kill. And this is We Eviscerate What We Love. A rabbit lies belly open on the kitchen floor, its glassy eyes refracting lamplight, viscera spilling onto tile. I read its warm pink innards like tea leaves before trying to lift the open envelope of its body in my hands and out the door. Daybreak repeats this nightmare's refrain until I write it down. Why do we kill what we love? And still my hands feel tinged with slaughter. My youngest daughter loves the hare who lives in our yard and looks for it daily. The white spots on its back legs appear brighter in sunshine. If I look right at the sun and then down, I can see only the white spots. They obliterate everything else. Once my husband mowed over a nest of kits, and one jumped between the blades. His regret was a bright white spot obliterating his afternoon. Within minutes, my vision returns. Within hours, regret fades. Or at least you can see beyond it. Once another kit, probably a half-sibling, fell into a window well and couldn't jump free from the vines curled there like so many loosed intestines. In my hands, its needle-fine bones trembled. I carried it inside to show the kids, and the family dog looked at me and the rabbit with love, with devotion, as if he understood, just born, helpless. But when I let him sniff the new, untested fur, he opened his mouth slowly and gently, as if, though he wasn't hungry, he would eat. And then, just checking my time. I just want to end with 3 poems from a little book, Fabulous Beast, because it turned 1 during the pandemic. And it made me kind of sad because my plans for traveling and supporting the book, I mean, everybody's plans for travel were dashed, but I kind of wanted to just support the press and support my book and couldn't do it. But I mean, it's made me even more grateful for like these readings and the fact that the KGB bar like went online, because Jason and I set this up before everything went to shit. So I'm really grateful, and congratulations on your new book too, Jason. I hope everybody like goes out and looks for it and supports you and purchases a copy. So the poems in Fabulous Beast are another collection of fabulous poems. I like never left my tweeny unicorn phase, I guess. And I like the kind of the magical that enters real life, or like using it as a kind of metaphor for the difficult that occurs. So it focuses on motherhood and shifting identity, like a sense of agency, voice. And the first poem from the first section is going to be about a shape-shifting pig. And the second poem is from the middle section, which is like a fairy tale written in 10 chapters. And then the last borrows imagery from Norse mythology. So the stories our mothers teach us. When I was your size and just weaned, the sow tells her piglet, I found a hole in our pen and squeezed my small, round body through. At first, no one missed me. I ran across the farmer's fields, slipped into a ditch filled with nettle and wire, and then climbed out, skin and snout torn. Between the edge of the field and that stinging, tearing abyss, I sat panting at the sky. All the stars tapped and telegraphed shiny, tinny warnings, but I refused to listen. The night wind smelled sharp with burning wood and honeysuckle, and I had to follow the scent. That was the day I fell in love with blindness and the strange way that scent and even stench can comfort us. But I was found, and now I have scars. May I go into the woods one day, her piglet asks. It is my duty to deny, the sow says. Your duty is to listen, and then dig and dig under fences at night. A big part of fairy tales is transformation, and the fairy tale is called The Woman with the Frog Tongue. And so she begins with the voice of birds, has her tongue transformed into this frog tongue, and then eventually, like, she grows a second heart, which becomes a bird. It's very bizarre, but this is from that. She grows a second heart. That night, she woke to find another oddity. During sleep, her heart had split or twinned itself, and where one muscle pumped before now beat 2. Her blood coursed through her veins twice as fast as before, and over those paths her skin buzzed and stammered like wire strung tautly between two poles and charged with load, as if she'd run for miles across rolling hills, as if inside her chest two fists beat time all day. Beneath the bone she sped at death in the most alive way. The day crawled while her two hearts raced. Above the fire, she set a series of clocks to ticking. She watched the flames, sometimes leaning close enough to feel the heat singe her stitches a deeper shade, their fibers scorching until they curled like dark froth spilling from her mouth. But when her hearts began to flicker more and faster than she could stand, she turned her eyes to the clock's marked faces and drew comfort from the second hand's neurotic twitch. Every minute witnessed meant another minute lived. Beneath her breastbone, her strange second heart pulsed harder. She sensed the muscle like her tongue would leap and fly away from her body if her body let it go. She took the silver-handled knife and incised across above the cavity where her hearts ballooned together, jostling for room and dominance. The flaps of skin, pale as eggshell, trembled slightly. A head appeared. A bird with obsidian eyes, emerged wet with her blood, shook to shed its burden, and leapt toward the rafters above. She watched the bird and felt air seep into the space she left behind, her single heart unrivaled but lonely in its great room. The wound bled slowly, healing fast in a pale silver scar, flaps falling back to close neatly over the bone, which laid itself again like lines of track or scaffolding across her chest. The bird flew to the windowsill and tipped its head to look back at the woman. A slight breeze, cool and calm, caressed its dark wings, and it leapt for the steady branch of that arm. And last, a woman. But before the three gods could begin to create, they had to get rid of the frost giant and Mir. 1. Each morning the sunrise runs its rough, wet tongue along the earth and, over time, strips salt from its rock. The shape of my life emerges. Here, an outcrop of hip. There, my breast, a precipice from which my children, also rot, will detach and like a landslide fall. These shifting sands are anxiety, this strata fear, and underneath there flows a stirring liquefied heat. The creature who wakes and clambers inch by inch away from this bed of slag is born fighting a great hunger. It threatens her like water after rain consumes the dunes and tender grasses exposed along the shore. 2. By sunset, I am a creature sucking greedily at the last light of day. I eat, and yet I am always hungry, and my children are always hungry. We fight for what we want. We grow beyond our needs. And 3. Somewhere in this mire, my better self gives birth to better children, embodiments of faith and love, not frost and rock and teeth that never stop their gnashing. May these better children find me and destroy the wild monster I have become. May they take my body, my blood and brine, to build the world they'll someday rule. My brains and skull for sky, my hair for forests of ash and alder, my flesh for moss beneath the leaves and clouds. May this hunger be put to rest. May I return to sediment, the dregs from which I took my birth. That's a lot from me, so thank you for the opportunity to read. That's fun.
I was going to do the laughter button for Jason. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. Wow. And I think that, I don't know if we saw that there's a comment in here from Melinda that says that one of the upsides of using Zoom is the allowance for hybridity. And I think that's totally true. Sometimes people want to show art, or they want to show, like if it's something ekphrastic, they want to show something, whatever inspired it, or like sometimes just showing their poems. So really, really cool. Awesome performance.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And thanks to Meredith for letting me show her art too, because I wasn't sure if I was allowed.
You're
Okay, so we'll
welcome.
take like 2 minutes, and then we'll hear from our second poet. If anybody wants to, this is normally where people would go have cigarettes and stuff, or drink, get another drink from the bar. Jason, I was just thinking about too, that issue. We were talking about the fact that at the KGB bar fundraiser, you can spend $50,000 to get a $45,000 bar tab. I bet you Seiji would know when you hit $45,000. He would.
Oh,
Be
he would.
like,
He would totally
yeah,
know.
like-
I just don't think any human being can get to a $45,000 bar tab without just destroying their liver. Like I just
know,
think
They
you
have
would
lots
be.
of friends.
Anyone who could. I mean, I guess it's I mean, to me, it's like a lifetime bar tab. Like,
You just gotta keep playing those drums.
yeah,
You know, just maybe just $3,000 a year. You know, you
Yeah.
knock off the 45 and you just keep playing
Make it
those
to
drums. And I
107.
don't know, it'll be there.
That's true. It doesn't matter what else you do with your life as long as you keep playing the drums. That's what we learned from Viola Smith.
Sarah, you reminded me, I'm gonna go put a load of laundry in and then I shall return. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Gina, do you want to
Excellent. All right,
remind
we'll take
everyone to sign up for the open mic?
Yes, please. Everybody sign up for the open mic. If you haven't already, you can, I think, email the KGB Gmail, or you can DM the Instagram, and we'll be sure to add you to the lineup. It is November 30th, so it's our annual post-Thanksgiving open mic. And everyone's allowed to go. In the words of John Deming, it's like a gong style type of show.
That's a way to.
You have, I think, 2 minutes, to read, and three minutes to read, and then you get the gong. And as someone who didn't know what the Gong Show was, I'm enlightened.
Did you look it up?
Yeah, because there's a reboot of the Gong Show now.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
yeah, so like I've been reacquainted with it, and
That's not shocking.
was
America really does love humiliation these days. Sort of seems.
But I mean, I haven't watched any of like the America's Got Talent or but don't they do the same thing where they buzz you and they make you leave if you get to 3 X's?
yeah, if you suck, you have to
Like,
go.
isn't that like?
3
I mean,
X's,
that's
gotta
just the Gong Show, but you just have like an electronic
Yeah.
X instead of a gong.
The gong
Mhm.
is so much better. I mean,
gong
I
is
think
better.
Objectively better. Yeah, like by an order of magnitude.
Gong is like sillier. It's fun. It's not as serious as the other shows. Like the other shows are like $50,000, and you have to give a backstory of all these really traumatic things that happen, but you're still contorting your body or singing and stuff like that. But like Gong Show is like, we know what we are. We're silly. Pull
Although-
up and do something silly.
If we could win $50,000, we could have a $45,000 bar tab.
Well, I mean, I can put in extra tickets for the lottery. I don't really gamble, but
I don't have talent.
Hmm.
I
you
can't go on
do.
those shows. I have one talent.
Poetry's a talent.
Poetry's a
What's-
talent, yes. I'm a good
almost said,
teacher
what's
too,
the
but you can't really teach. Like you can't go on America's Got Talent and be like, I'm a very good teacher.
No, it's not gonna work.
Like that's not, like I'd like to explain literary theory now. By the end of the hour, you will all understand deconstruction and how we moved from new criticism. I know, like, right? Like if you're already like, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
But I mean, we can find something. I mean, John plays music. I still
think-
have
I think
somewhat of a singing voice.
I actually think I'm gonna try to just set up a gong. Like for real, like not a real one, not like the dude from Germany that came in that time. I wish if we could have him
That was
swinging the
fascinating.
mallet into the gong. Could you imagine every time it was time for someone to stop? But
That would have
Yeah,
been.
why don't you send him like a special invite?
yeah, I know it's actually not a terrible idea, right?
Kind of a fun idea.
Yeah.
I don't
But
remember
Linda,
Otherwise,
you
I'll-
look so cuddly. You look like so like comforted,
Me?
Linda. Yeah, you look so comfortable.
Must be the Xanax.
No,
No, it's
it's the way
uncomfortable.
you're sitting. You look so
Oh
comfortable.
yeah, I get this lovely wing
the
chair.
chair and the throw.
Yeah.
Like a plant in there.
I miss you
I'm dying.
guys.
All right, I'm just gonna grab a drink and then we'll do an introduction for Matthew Thorburn. What do y'all think?
Yes.
Sound good? All right.
Sounds great. Yeah. I'm still letting my liver rest. I was
Please.
really worried how little I felt that drink a couple weeks ago. So
Wait, you were drinking a lot a couple weeks ago?
well, I used to drink a lot every Monday night.
Yeah.
And then one Monday night I drank a lot and I didn't feel anything. And that's how you know you're getting a problem.
That's
how you know that you're
scary.
yeah. I was like, I should feel this like a lot, and I feel it like nothing at all. But I am drinking out of oh, you can't see it because my
I saw the
background-
metal straw.
I do like the metal straw. I'm a big
Me
convert to
too.
the metal straw. Wait here, I have to show you. This is my
Oh,
wait.
I see it somewhat. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
right. That's right.
cats.
It's it was the only way I could get through Cats.
Jason,
Okay,
you
so
know
my
that
update on Cats. I got to watch it, and I
Oh,
couldn't
the
sit through it.
movie?
Yeah, I couldn't sit through it. I couldn't.
It makes no sense.
There were dancing roaches.
It
I
makes
kind
no
of
sense.
blanked out.
Like I thought that when we saw the musical, it would make, like, you know how when you like, it doesn't make sense when you listen to the soundtrack and then you go see the show and you're like, oh, that's what's happening to Evita when that happens.
It's like diegetic, but in films it kind of loses steam.
Well, it's like a series of vignettes, isn't it? Just supposed to be like the Eliot poems, like rendered magnificently, or something like that.
But like that's a level of coherence it doesn't even have. Like you're right. Like
Yeah.
like just like we're different kinds of cats and we sing about ourselves. Like actually makes more sense than Cats.
The film, yeah, the musical makes more sense than the film. The film is like, okay, I'm not
Because they're
invested.
jellicle cats.
I don't know. When I was little, my parents took us to see Cats when it came to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Like, that's where I grew up. And it was, all of us were just sitting there like, what are we watching? Like, none of us understood, but we're all like, thanks for taking us out to the Kennedy
so glad
Center.
we're
You know, like,
here.
you know that you're supposed to be grateful and enjoying it. And it's a train wreck in front of you.
It's confusing because like in the 80s, you were also like, oh, this is culture.
Yes.
Maybe I don't like culture.
Yes.
Maybe I don't.
But what's that one that's like, touch me? You know, I'm not gonna sing it, you know, but it's really beautiful. You know,
Memories.
That's Memory.
Memories. Yeah.
Touch me.
Come on, that's
It's
pretty
so
good.
easy to leave me.
Yeah. There we
all
are.
That's the
alone
best
with the
part.
memories.
You
It's
do
like
have a
4
talent.
There you go.
bars. It's
You
like
do have a
4
talent.
bars of that, and then it's over. And she's singing about how like no one likes her because she used to be pretty, but now she's not pretty.
Huh.
In the
And
context of the musical, she was like the star cat, and then she went off with McCavity, who's kind of like the bad cat.
Wait, I thought
And
there was
because
no.
she went off with him, she
she's
became like
Grisabella,
the glamour puss.
yeah. But if everyone votes for her, then she gets to be reincarnated.
Yeah, it's something she wants to be. She doesn't want to be a raggedy old glamour puss anymore.
And
Well,
no
on
one
that
likes
note,
her. But then she sings a song, and then everyone votes for her, and then she gets to be reincarnated. And it doesn't like you're like what like.
For Mern to come and read now.
Anyway, all right. So Matt's back. We're ready. We're ready
Imagine
for
somebody
the second
says
half.
that to you.
Wait on
Imagine
me?
like you reach that state,
Sorry.
someone looks at you and says, "Look at that raggedy old glamour puss." I'd actually be like, "All right, I did okay. All right, that's not so."
That needs to be my
Like,
Instagram bio.
Yeah.
Raggedy old
I'm
glamour puss.
changing my Twitter bio to glamour glamour cat,
Glamour poet.
glamour poet.
So on that note, we have Matthew Thorburn coming up next. We will do another ringing endorsement for KGB Bar, but
Oh, John, did I mute you?
you did, but I'm back.
Oh, I'm
All
so
good.
sorry.
So thanks again, everybody, for coming. It's awesome to see familiar faces, of course, to see like Melinda, Dawn, and Sabrina, and everybody. Jada, Matt, and Jason, and I are thrilled, and just to have everybody. We are back next week. But that said, more about that later. Matthew Thorburn, who I've had the pleasure to see before. His poems are sharp, observational, thoughtful, and socially engaged. He can zoom out and create the catharsis that comes from seeing the whole after so much time preoccupied with what's right in front of us. Sort of like the parable of the blind man and the elephant. I don't know if you know the it's bigger than what you can feel by touching it. In fact, many of his poems themselves can feel like parables, drawing wisdom from careful observation and always allowing in any drawn conclusion a little bit of mystery. He also sort of a low-key formalist, which is to say you will always be moved by his great attention to sound and to the nuances of rhythm in the line. His latest book is The Grace of Distance, LSU Press, a finalist for the Patterson Poetry Prize. He's also the author of 6 previous collections, including the book-length poem Dear Almost, honored with the Laskow Prize in Collected Poetry, A Green River in Spring, winner of the Cole Hill Review Chapbook Competition, This Time Tomorrow, a finalist for the National Poetry Series and the Anthony Hecht Prize, Every Possible Blue, Subject to Change, winner of the New Issues Poetry Prize, and an earlier chapbook, the long poem Disappears in the Rain. His work has been recognized with the Whitter Binner Fellowship from the Library of Congress, the Mississippi Review Prize, and fellowships from the Bronx and New Jersey Arts Councils and the Swanee Writers Conference. A native of Michigan and for many years a resident of NYC, he now lives with his family in small town Jersey. Matthew Thorburn.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks, it's great to be here with you guys. I just want to say, when I first moved to New York to go to the New School back in 1999, my classmates and I used to go to the KGB every Monday night, and for a lot of years after that. And it just was really a part of my kind of growing up as a poet. And it's amazing that you guys have continued that great tradition, and I'm just really thrilled and honored to be part of it. So thanks so much. And yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot to be said for these Zoom readings. I think there's it would be nice to be together in person, chipping away at that $45,000 bar tab. But it's nice to be together online too. I'm going to read a few poems from this book, The Grace of Distance. It was published a year ago in August, so August 2019, and back when distance meant very different things to me than it does now. But it's a book of poems about distances between people, within families, between cultures and places in the world, as well as distances, sort of looking back to the past and understanding where we've come from in all different senses, and even distances sort of between faith and doubt and things like that. So all kinds of distances, and the grace that can come from that, a sort of sense of perspective or understanding, or kind of feeling like you maybe figure things out for a second before it all gets complicated again. So I want to read a few poems from this, and then I want to read a couple of newer poems. But I'll just start with the first poem in the book. And a number of these poems either are sort of set in China or have to do with Chinese culture or art. My wife's parents came from China by way of Taiwan, so it's sort of part of our family and our lives. So I wanted to share that. This is a little short poem called "The Call." That's kind of a little fable. Once a boy slipped down a well in far Anhui. He surfaced deep in Mongolia, whispering through his fever of the vast star-clouded sky he swam beneath. Once I called down into that dark glitter, then cursed, then bargained, then begged, until someone called back. And this is a poem called "Like Hours of Rain on Piles of Brown Leaves." If this cloud gray bell is so old, no one's allowed to ring it anymore, is it still a bell? Is the forbidden city, open to anyone, all day, really still forbidden? All mysteries solved, all bodies identified by the patterns of metal in their teeth. And I'm drowning in facts and relics, in maps and audio guides and directions for all the ways you can get there from here. Severe clear, pilots call it. Days when you can just see and see and see. But don't get too lofty here. Only my eye doctor, Zach, gets to speak of vision. Did you know one pharaoh had his heart wrapped in cloth and placed in a little wooden box when he died? Who wouldn't sometimes wish to set your heart aside and close that lid? Call it the grace of distance, a starry sky above the pyramids buried in sand. Words plus temples. That's how you get to poetry in Chinese. And love is happiness, said twice. In one day, Jay's ginkgo lost all its leaves, still green, cloven like paper hearts. Do you believe your heart sometimes leaves your body and then comes back? The swallows must have built their nest beneath the eaves next door, because under and up, all afternoon they keep disappearing. this book sort of had its start as I was writing actually my previous books, and as I was putting a book together, there would be a poem or a few poems that just didn't really fit in for sort of thematic reasons or sort of the feel of them. But there were poems I liked, so I saved them. And then over the years of working on those other books, which was quite a few years, I sort of built up this little file of poems that I thought were good poems, but they just hadn't sort of fit in anywhere. And as I was looking at them and thinking about them, I realized that they were all sort of about, well, most of them were about these distances. And that was sort of the heart of this book. Once I realized that, then I wrote a lot more poems, but that's kind of how this got started. Sort of writing about it without quite realizing it. This next poem I want to read is called An Annunciation. I'm sorry, I kind of forgotten where in the book it was, but it's right here on page 59. You know, an annunciation is when the angel comes to Mary in the Bible story and says, you know, you're going to have a baby. So there's actually a couple of poems in this book that sort of reimagine that kind of a scene. And this is one of those. An Annunciation. Wouldn't it be easier for the old woman who gets up each day to bake bread before dawn, who no longer dreams of anything, and the traveling salesman lost in thought, perched like a sparrow on the motel bed, if an angel came down and said, "This is your life now. Here is what you must do." The snow, like a heavy curtain, falls on our first acts. Upstairs, a teenager sings to herself by the frost-starred window. Hear her walking back and forth, bed to dresser, dresser to bed. Would it be wrong to imagine these words are her song? You might suppose she's packing for a journey, but she left long ago. And then something I really wanted to read tonight is a couple of poems about New York City. And in particular, these are two poems about Manhattan. Officially, I work in Manhattan, although I haven't been there since about March 13th or 12th. But I used to go into the city 3 or 4 days a week and work in Midtown. I miss the city. It's hard to imagine what it's like now, or it's kind of hard to imagine myself being back there, but I hope to be back there. Will probably be next year. But this is a poem that came about from friends of mine were editing an anthology of poems about perfumes. And I'm not a big perfume person really, but if someone asks you to write something, I don't like to say no. So I said, I'd love to take part in this. And luckily for me, they sent me a perfume called Manhattan. And so I was able to write this sort of in response to that smell, or kind of in sort of rejecting that smell and then writing about Manhattan. So the title is a question, and it's, "This is what the city smells like?" After the Fragrance Manhattan by Bond No. 9. No. Give me the steam of pork dumplings, 10,000 made by hand each day on Mott Street. The cool marble of Grand Central, where 250,000 people catch a train. Shoe polish and subway ad glue, and a pale dusting from the rising sun of pizza dough spinning overhead. Mix for me the horsey funk of handsome cabs, yellow mustard on a hot Knish, on again, off again rain. A dash of asphalt and taxi exhaust, the sawdust and cement dust of buildings going up or coming down. Give me a gust of hot bakery air, the sweet and sour tang of a rush hour train, newsprint and armpits, damp wool, baby powder, a hint of hope or disappointment depending on the hour. For me, it's the dark tickle of luncheonette coffee, its briny pickles plucked from a barrel, and the gingery waft of a midtown sushi den. Give me 59th Street fountain spray, faint and cool on the breeze, from that 100-year-old fountain, Homeless men sneeze and dip their toes in. And even a whiff of the glossy black bags piled high along 35th, trash shining and baking in the morning sun. But Corsican immortelle, gold saffron and sandalwood, notes of suede. Take a hike up Fifth Avenue and spritz some other guy with that. Anoint my neck and cheeks with espresso dust and the grease of this pig floating past, roasted red and glistening, shouldered high on a board by two skinny cooks bickering in Cantonese and pushing through the crowd on Canal Street. Let us sniff matzaripas, disco fries, decades of spilled beer behind the piano at the Vanguard, and the ghost of cigarette smoke in all the bars you can no longer smoke in. This city smells like milk crates full of foxed paperbacks for sale on the sidewalk. Like the fishmonger in her gut-mapped apron, fish scales glittering on her wrists. It carries the zing of pickled herring. It smells like glazed donuts and nail polish, yellow curry, a stack of scratch-off tickets, and a dirty penny. Like bodega roses, kimchi and fried rice, and the faraway ocean you can sometimes smell deep in downtown, if just for a moment you stand perfectly still. Thank you. I meant that to be kind of a humorous poem with some attitude. It makes me a little emotional right now. I miss being in the city. Although, you know, the sort of grace of distance on the flip side, I'm happy to be here with my family and get to spend so much time with my wife and my young son here in New Jersey. And I'm actually teaching an undergraduate workshop this semester online, which is something I was never really able to do in my old working life. So those are my silver linings. This is a little poem. This is the last poem in the book. It's another little New York poem. And this is dedicated to my friend and teacher and an amazing poet named Keith Taylor, who I think is somebody that very few people read as much as they should. But he's a really wonderful poet. This is called Watch Over Us. Keith, it seemed only right, reading your Marginalia for a Natural History on the hot subway home from work, to turn the page. The pages are loose, the book well thumbed, and find a mosquito poised at the top of the next one. Delicate as a watch spring, its body a tiny, shiny transistor. I thought I'd smush it with my thumb, but then how did it get there? Where could it be headed, traveling uptown like me? Lord, watch over us all tonight on these journeys we may not even know we're taking. And I'm going to read, I think, just one more poem from the book and then a couple of new poems. One of the things I do sometimes when I'm writing, and I agree with what Sarah said, I've had a hard time writing this year, it seems like, but one of the things I like to do is to sort of give myself a challenge or a little assignment or something to sort of work against. And so there's two poems in here they're sort of all one sentence. They run on a little bit, but they're like single sentence poems. And one is really short, one's just a little bit longer. I'm gonna read the little bit longer one. It's just 2 pages. This is called How Every Song Ends. I guess the tune was out of nowhere, and so it must have been a lark, a laugh, since the session was already over. The bass in its case and the piano lid lowered. Everyone headed out the door for a pre-dawn drink or a bad girl's arms. And don't forget to kill the lights. But then Joe strums his guitar, picks out those opening notes, and the trumpets, one older, fainter, one bright and brusque, step up to tell us what this song's all about. That timeless back and forth, what she said and he said, nudging each other, disagreeing and agreeing about who was right, who was wrong, who did or didn't do what, noodling through all the should haves and meant tos that make up our lives. The laundry list of missed calls, closed doors, the letter unsent. That time he didn't look back, but wishes he did. And don't you know it's late, too late. That's what the trumpets call out. And yet, how happy the end of this night caught on tape. How lucky the engineer who flipped the switch, turned the lights back up so he could see the trumpet's bells, the guitar's dull glow, Doc and Bud and Joe. How this whirl of notes circles the mic. And how we, who weren't even alive for these 6.5 minutes, not long, long enough, long ago, hold our breath, as here they come now, all the way around, to play the chorus once more, and remind us how every song ends by going back to where it began, until there's only silence and someone stops the tape, turns out the light. And then I want to read just 3 newer poems. There's from a new manuscript I've been working on. This first one is a haibun, a prose poem with a little sort of haiku at the end. It's called Fireflies. Yellow-green glimmers against the blue-black sky. One, then another, then another. In Hokusai's woodblock, a lady's servants have caught fireflies in a wooden cage. It's dawn there, so no wonder she looks so tired. They're so faint. In my mother's long ago childhood, the children trapped them in a glass jar. Air holes punched in the tin lid, but still, come morning, they've died. Is that why I stand here now? Why I only want to look? I linger over their sudden ons and offs, the way they mean and keep meaning, these pinholes in the night. Seeing them, yesterday feels further away. Each scrap I swore I'd never forget slips deeper into the dark. The words, if there were words. Then the melody of that song my mother hums as she catches them. The servant whistles as he latches the cage. I can hardly hear. How easy after all to let go, to turn away now and watch as the fireflies flare up. Here, nowhere, now here. And I want to do something I never do, but I've heard other people do, which is to read the last poem you've been working on, your most recent poem. So I'm going to do that. I'll share that with you. I don't think this is done, but I wanted to share it. And it's not explicitly about the pandemic or about quarantine, but it's a sort of wishful poem of kind of what I'd like to be doing right now if I felt comfortable doing it, which is to go to a museum and look at art. And this is written in lines with inline spaces. So I don't know if you can see this, but it's like sort of spread out on the page. This is called Fragments of a Chinese Silk Painting on Loan to the State Museum in Trenton. Her cheek, pale peach, even now. And what I see, leaning closer, is hair pulled into a bun. That deep darkness of an eye leaves me to imagine her nose, her chin, the girlish fullness of her face as she turned back, not smiling, but about to smile. And here's a long stripe of robe, pale green, trimmed with gold, an upturned hand. I think she's a musician. That's the neck of an erhu, isn't it? And behind her, gray branches arch away from a missing trunk. A cluster of leaves floats like a cloud. The painting's in tatters. So she comes back the way memory comes back, in fragments, faded coins, strips of color, arranged behind glass, pink and yellow, like petals wind-torn, pasted across my windshield. They remind me, before I drive home, they once were flowers. And I'm going to end with one more newer poem from the last couple of years. It's a poem about my son. As I said, I've been glad to spend so much time with this year. It's called The Nest. A nest is a circle, Preston said, because Birdie keeps turning. She works from inside. I thought, busy little builder. Then thought, where did he learn this? Then I found one on the ground. The delicate mud gray weave, twig and grass and weed, raggy strand of white ribbon worked in. Dusty little cup in the cup of my palm. I held it low so Press could see. Held it gingerly, I thought, a word I'd never used before. Such a distance sometimes between where things belong and where they end up, or where we put them. We had 2 miscarriages, one before him, one after. And so often I think of those other names we chose, the ones we'll never tell anyone. What kind of bird lived there? Would it come back? This morning I tried to tuck the nest into the forked branches above where I found it. It fell again. I thought, well, it's ruined, tagged with the scent of my hands, though they couldn't put it back either. Anyway, I was glad for this break from the mindlessness of mowing. Glad to think anyway. All-purpose word for moving on, as the heat ticked higher. But even after the mower had stopped, the ghost of it roared in my ears like the sensation any time I hear someone else's mom or dad call one of those names. I can't help looking, craning to see who will answer. As if I'll recognize her, recognize him. But there was only crashing silence. Then I heard the birds calling once more. Then I picked up the nest. Thank you so much, especially to share those poems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. We had hang on a second, a comment along the way here too as well. We love the star-clouded sky. I don't know if that was obvious, but I don't know if everybody's looking at the chat, but we do have, God, that makes it sound like it's almost like, so, but we have, thank you, Matthew, beautiful poem, sending hugs from Michigan to you and your family. Gorgeous, that was gorgeous. And so on and so forth. Really great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out tonight. And Sabrina and Jennifer and Aaron and Melinda and Meredith and of course Sarah and Matthew. That's been amazing. So we'll be back with you next week with Charlie Clark and Patrick Donnelly. And so the Zoom link that you used to get here tonight will get you here next Monday. So hope to see you all back.
Thank you so much.